The $2 trillion plan. Lawmakers try to pass the biggest relief bill in U.S. history, but they hit a last-minute snag. We're on Capitol Hill. Battling the virus. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he has tested positive for COVID-19. Orbi et Orbi. A report from Rome as Pope Francis delivers a blessing usually reserved for Christmas and Easter. And remembering Mother Angelica, a look back at the life of EWTN's foundress on the 4th anniversary of her death. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, March 27, 2020. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. House lawmakers took to the floor today voting to pass the $2.2 trillion economic stimulus package, a relief bill to help workers, businesses, and a healthcare system ravaged by the coronavirus. Correspondent Eric Rosales reports now from Capitol Hill.
In a sparsely populated Capitol building, House members debated the largest emergency aid package in U.S. history. The coronavirus crisis causing some tense moments on the House floor.
To our doctors and our nurses, I wear these latex
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland is reserved. The gentleman from Texas is recognized. The gentleman from Texas is now recognized.
Calmer voices from both parties offered praise.
Thank you to the frontline healthcare workers who selflessly and compassionately care for victims of the Wuhan virus. Thank you to President Trump for his leadership and for his transparency with the American people in this time of crisis. Thank you to my anesthesiologist colleagues who've stepped up to the challenge.
And empathy.
I will be voting for this bill for the children who are foregoing their school and for the millions of children for whom that means that they are losing the stability and the nutritional support that comes with it. I will be voting for this bill for my family members and my friends and constituents who have lost their jobs in the past 2 weeks because of this pandemic.
The bill was expected to pass by a voice vote. Thursday, Thomas Massie of Kentucky criticized the bill and pledged to move for a roll call vote. That would require 218 voting members out of the 435. President Trump criticized the Republican as a, quote, third-rate grandstander, tweeting he just wants the publicity. And lawmakers made arrangements to arrive in person to cast their vote and pass the bill. But in the end, it wasn't necessary, and a voice vote was enough to pass the bill, sending it to the president's desk.
The motion is adopted.
At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
As the United States battles the coronavirus, it has plenty of company. Nearly every other country in the world is impacted as well. But tonight, the U.S. leads the entire world in the number of infections. This as the 15 Days to Slow the Spread campaign is quickly coming to a head. Correspondent Owen Jensen reports now from the White House. Owen.
Tracy, you're right. That 15 days is almost up. What happens next, of course, remains to be seen. In the meantime, the White House and the world continue to fight the coronavirus on a changing battlefield. Across the globe, the coronavirus attacking regular people and high-powered politicians.
Hi, folks. I want to bring you up to speed with something that's happening today, which is that I've developed mild symptoms of the coronavirus. That's to say, a temperature and a persistent cough.
And like so many are instructed to do,
I am working from home, I'm self-isolating, and that's entirely the right thing to do.
Back in the U.S., President Trump tweeting, "The world is at war with a hidden enemy. We will win. The enemy everywhere." The global numbers, over 500,000 infected, more than 25,000 dead. The main convention center in Madrid converted into a field hospital. Spain announcing a record number of deaths overnight.
Primer mozo de escuadra fallecido por el coronavirus.
Spain's severely strained health service has close to 10,000 health workers infected with COVID-19. And while there's been blame assigned,
they made a statement that our soldiers brought it into China. No, it came from China.
The president tweeting out an olive branch of sorts. Just finished a very good conversation with President Xi of China, discussed in great detail the coronavirus that is ravaging large parts of our planet. China has been through much and has developed a strong understanding of the virus. We are working closely together. Much respect. Meanwhile, the White House Coronavirus Task Force engaging the battle on the home front, including the Slow the Spread campaign.
As every American recognizes that the importance of 15 days to slow the spread, that we're approaching day 15.
And then what happens?
We're going to listen to the very best health experts in the world. We're going to examine that data very carefully, and we'll be presenting this weekend the president a range of recommendations and additional guidance.
Elsewhere, Zimbabwe in Africa is announcing a 3-week lockdown. France is continuing its confinement for a few more weeks, and Turkey just surpassed 5,000 cases. Wash your hands. Tracy?
All right, thank you, Owen. Correspondent Owen Jensen reporting from the White House tonight. While during this pandemic, some states are calling for a ban on abortion to ensure that all medical resources are devoted to treating patients with COVID-19. But abortion providers are fighting those orders and even asking for medical supplies that are desperately needed to fight the virus. Correspondent Mark Irons reports.
Asking for donations to continue providing abortions during a global crisis. Planned Parenthood Keystone in Pennsylvania advertising a need for hand sanitizer, masks, and gloves. The same in-demand supplies required in the coronavirus fight.
Planned Parenthood and the abortion lobby are hoarding much-needed supplies.
That response from Mallory Quigley with the pro-life group Susan B. Anthony List. States like Texas, Ohio, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Tennessee ordering a postponement of non-essential medical procedures and elective surgeries, including most abortions.
It is all hands on deck right now to defend against the coronavirus, to protect the most vulnerable at this time when all Americans are making great sacrifices to protect their own health and the health of the others around them. We need the abortion lobby to be on board, especially at this moment.
Planned Parenthood is responding. This week in Texas, the abortion provider filing an emergency lawsuit in federal court attempting to override the state's order to stop elective procedures like abortion. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says the national focus should be on dedicating resources to battle COVID-19.
Whether it's doctors, nurses, it's personnel, or whether it's supplies.
Paxton is shocked Planned Parenthood would attempt to continue abortions right now.
And it's just sad to me that they don't seem to care about the risk that poses to other people that could die because they insist on their elective procedures right now, and they're demanding them right now.
Meanwhile, in Virginia, through executive order, Governor Ralph Northam, in addition to making religious gatherings of 10 or more people a criminal offense, is allowing abortions to continue as the coronavirus spreads. Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Pope Francis gave the world a special blessing today from an empty St. Peter's Square. This extraordinary blessing, named Orbi et Orbi, is given only on Christmas and Easter. However, Pope Francis made an exception, offering an extra blessing this year during the time of global crisis and fear due to the coronavirus. It also offers Catholics the possibility to receive a plenary indulgence. Edward Pentin, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, joins us now. Thanks so much for joining us, Ed.
Hi, it's good to be with you, Tracy.
So, Ed, what did he say in his homily at the extraordinary moment of prayer?
Well, he talked, Tracy, about a thick darkness, he said, which has covered squares, streets and cities because of this pandemic. And then he also talked about, or recalled the story of Jesus calming the storm and the disciples in the boat, and they were very afraid. And he says we need to identify with that. And he says that because of this pandemic, it's exposed very much our vulnerabilities, our deafness to the world's injustice. But he says that the Lord, through this, is calling us to faith, to be converted, and to return to him with our hearts and embrace the cross and not be afraid.
And for those who may not be familiar, what is an Orbi et Orbi blessing, and why is this one so special?
Right, well, the Orbi et Orbi blessing is what he usually gives at Easter and Christmas. And it's really a blessing to the city and to the world. That's what Orbi et Orbi means. And he usually gives a blessing and an address, and that's what he's doing today. But it's reserved especially for solemn occasions, as I say, both Easter and Christmas. And this time he's going to be praying with the miraculous crucifix that he prayed at, which was prayed to during the last plague or very great plague in Rome in the 16th century, which he prayed at about a week or two ago. and the Salus Populi Romani icon, which is also very important to Romans as well, the Madonna to pray to Our Lady also for an end to this pandemic. And that's very much what he'll be praying for, what he's been praying for tonight.
And this pandemic is hitting everyone really hard, and particularly in Italy. How has the church been faring during all of this?
Well, the church, as always during these times, is really at the forefront of helping and doing a lot of charitable work. The church in Italy has been really at the forefront of that. But so tragically, of many priests, something like we've counted up something like 86 priests have died because through the coronavirus in Italy. Most of them are over 80. Many are over 70 years old. And the youngest is only 45. There's another one aged 53, but most, as I say, are over 80 or over 70, and a few in their 60s.
Wow, it's very tragic. Before I let you go, Ed, though, I do want to touch on some other news right now. French President Emmanuel Macron announced yesterday that he's going to be pulling French troops from Iraq due to the coronavirus. What do you know about that?
Yes, well, this coincided with the release of 4 abducted volunteers, excuse me, for the charity SOS Chrétien d'Orient, which is a charity helping persecuted Christians in the Middle East primarily. And they were 4 who were abducted on January the 20th, and they were released yesterday after obviously a couple of months in captivity. We didn't know what happened to them. So there's a lot of rejoicing about that and the fact that these 4 are now free.
Well, Ed, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Stay safe. Edward Pentin, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks again, Ed.
Thank you, Tracy.
Well, France is joining other countries with drive-through testing stations. These screening tests are for doctors and for nurses to see if they're infected with COVID-19. The health workers can stay in their cars as another medical technician tests them with a nasal swab. Many Muslims gather in mosques for prayers on Fridays, but across the world today, those mosques were nearly empty. The call to prayer in Pakistan. Only a few Muslims attended a mosque in Karachi. Social distancing forces them to sit far apart from one another. The government is urging Muslims to avoid praying at mosques in order to stop the spread of the coronavirus, but some are ignoring the order. In Iraq at this time of year, hundreds of thousands of Muslims usually make a pilgrimage to the Muslim holy city of Karbala, but not this year. The shrines there are being disinfected as religious tourism grinds to a halt. Political turmoil in Afghanistan continues to hold up a peace deal with the Taliban. President Ashraf Ghani ordered a lockdown of Kabul today and announced a new team to negotiate with the Taliban. But his rival is rejecting the team. Abdullah says it is not inclusive enough. The dispute is slowing down negotiations that are supposed to come next under the deal signed between the U.S. and the Taliban. Coming up, an analysis on how the United Kingdom is handling the coronavirus pandemic. As we reported earlier, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has tested positive for COVID-19, but he insists he remains in charge of the UK's response to the outbreak.
I am working from home, I'm self-isolating, and that's entirely the right thing to do, but be in no doubt that I can continue, thanks to the wizardry of modern technology, to communicate with all my top team to lead the national fight back against coronavirus.
Prime Minister Johnson made that announcement in a video message posted earlier today on his Twitter account. He becomes the latest high-profile person to have contracted the virus, which has infected more than 500,000 people worldwide. Joining me now on Skype is Kevin Turley, UK correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Kevin, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So just this past Monday, the British Prime Minister announced that he was ordering the closure of most retail stores and banning public gatherings of more than 2 people who don't live together in a stepped-up response to slow the spread of the virus. What's been the reaction there now that Boris Johnson has tested positive for COVID-19?
Well, the news of the Prime Minister testing positive has come at the end of a pretty dismal week. Today was the highest death rate within the UK. 181 people have died. We now have over 14,579 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and a total of 759 people dead as a result. So this news has come at the end of a bad week, and I would say at a slightly shocking week, given the pace of change which we have seen in the UK this week, not just in terms of public health, but also in the economy and society at large.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister isn't the only high-profile person in the UK to have contracted this virus. We did learn earlier this week that Prince Charles, the first in line for the throne, also has the virus. That's correct, and
when that was announced, there was some disquiet around that, because Prince Charles is only, as the Prime Minister as well, are only displaying mild symptoms of COVID-19, and there is a scarcity of tests, and a lot of people were suggesting that the tests should only really be used at this point for frontline workers in the health service. But saying that, it's probably not unexpected that the head of the heir to the throne and also the current Prime Minister should be tested.
Kevin, the pandemic, we know, also forced the closure of Britain's Parliament, too. What impact, if any, will this have on the operations of the government?
Well, it will have very little in the short term, because Parliament was about to go into recess anyway, I think in 2 weeks' time for Easter. So it just took an early break, essentially, for Easter. A lot of the emergency legislation was rushed through beforehand. There was a slightly eerie scene of a Parliament very sparsely populated with MPs, because they all had to sit at a distance and only a certain number could go in. So a lot of this legislation is extremely extensive in terms of the effect it has on people's lives, but understandably, perhaps in the current crisis, there's very little scrutiny of it. I have to say that most political parties, both of the left and the right, are united that this is a national emergency, this is a crisis, and it's not a time for party political point scoring.
Kevin, before we let you go, we also want to touch on this. You know, we're just days away from the rededication of England as the dowry of Mary. How significant is that for the country's Catholics, especially given what the country is going through right now?
Well, before COVID-19, it was extremely significant. This is the rededication of England as Mary's dowry. The first time it happened was in 1381. And very interestingly, that came about because King Richard II was dealing with economic and political turmoil within England that was indirectly as a result of the bubonic plague. So this latest rededication now has not only a timeliness, but an urgency and a necessity, not just on a spiritual level, given the crisis that the country's in currently.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. We're praying for you all over there. Kevin Turley, UK correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
Up next, how Catholic dioceses are trying to reach the faithful while masses have been canceled. And Pope Francis tells the faithful how best to resist temptation. Pope Francis thanks those helping others and praying for those in need during the global outbreak.
E in silenzio Gesù ha fatto la sua passione.
At his daily Mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father also reflected on the ways the devil tries to lead us from God. He says the evil one becomes furious when we show our love for God and uses gossip, anger, and frustration to tempt us to sin. When faced with these tactics, the faithful can do two things: talk with people to make the situation better, or do as Christ did and find courage to remain silent rather than being tempted to fight back. The Holy Father also donated 30 ventilators to hospitals battling the coronavirus pandemic. Breathing machines have become one of the top healthcare necessities around the world. No word yet as to which hospitals will receive the ventilators. And you can read more about how the Pope and Vatican are helping people at our sister publication, CatholicNewsAgency.com. How to reach and engage the faithful while the public celebration of Mass is suspended. That is the challenge now faced by church leaders. Joining me now by Skype is Billy Atwell, Chief Communications Officer for the Catholic Diocese of Arlington. Billy, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
So, Billy, tell us, what's the Diocese of Arlington doing to reach the faithful now? And also, can you talk about how important it is to use technology in that effort?
Yeah, technology has really been a critical tool for us, but it's interesting to see how both the digital and the traditional media worlds have been helpful. We've got a newspaper that's been around for a long time, and with publishing houses still open, we're still able to reach 120,000 households twice a month. But it's really the digital technologies that have helped us with that continuous feed, that daily update that people needed, especially over the last couple of weeks. We've been able to communicate regularly, and I think that's been part of the key, is to continue to communicate. You almost can't over communicate with people whenever there's a situation. It doesn't have to just be a pandemic, but anytime there's fear, that the church needs to be responding frequently and regularly and through all the platforms that are available to us. And we're blessed in our diocese. We've got a studio in our building, so we're able to produce a lot of videos and podcasts, but we also air a spot from the bishop, a 1-minute spot on one of the local radio stations. But we're also doing live streams and posting a lot of things on our websites and our news sites. So it's been good to really maximize the potential of these tools that we're so lucky to have.
Billy, what's the response been like? What have they been saying during this time?
You know, the uncertainty from folks has been very sobering, you know, because we see it. We always say in communication, see the best and the worst that happens within the church. And, you know, seeing people really discouraged, frustrated with what's going on, and none of us really knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, every day we get a new announcement from our governor, and it changes things a bit. And then you hear national reports from the White House task force. And so I think there has been a huge outpouring of support for the fact that parishes have been doing live streams of the Mass and of adoration, and that there have been, you know, drive-up confessions and those kinds of things, and these really creative opportunities that are available to us. That has been, for some people, I think, the only hope that they have. Otherwise, it's kind of bleak. And we're a church of hope. We're a church of joy, and I think it's important to be that, especially right now.
Absolutely. And the pandemic has upended life in a number of ways, including putting a strain on people's finances. Has that impacted giving in any way?
It has, and our number one priority through this has been safety and health of parishioners and those who are clients of Catholic charities or our students in our schools, for instance, and the spiritual welfare, obviously, of the faithful. But we have noticed that a lot of the reports are still yet to come in, but we know anecdotally from the pastors that there has certainly been a hit. I mean, the primary generator of giving is that collection basket for offertory and for our Bishop's Lenten Appeal and so on. So we're working with parishes to accommodate wherever we can so that we're able to continue all the ministries that are happening. And it's wonderful to see Catholic Charities is continuing to feed the hungry. It's continuing to clothe the naked and shelter the homeless and provide medical care to the sick. And the reason we're able to do that is because the faithful have been so generous before now. Their investments are paying off because during this crisis, while so many are not able to be available to them, we're still there. And we're still doing that work. So I have to say thank you to the donors who have made it possible for us to do what we're doing now. And we're confident they're going to be there for us in the long term as well.
Well, Billy, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Billy Atwell, Chief Communications Officer for the Catholic Diocese of Arlington.
Thank you, Tracy.
And a reminder that you can always watch our daily masses right here on EWTN. Masses broadcast each day at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. We're also airing the Pope's Daily Mass, as well as the Novena from Our Lady of Lourdes. In addition, we are offering Eucharistic Adoration from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.com. Today is the 4th anniversary of the death of Mother Angelica, the foundress of EWTN. Mother Angelica founded EWTN on August 15, 1981. It offered 4 hours of daily programming to around 60,000 homes at the time. Today, the network reaches more than 300 million homes in nearly 150 countries around the world. Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Michael Warsaw says, quote, "I hope you will join me in offering a prayer of thanksgiving to God for the extraordinary life of Mother Mary Angelica and for all that she accomplished. May God grant her eternal glory among his saints." Mother Angelica died on Easter Sunday, 2016. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back on Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. We leave you now with more images from the Holy Father's special blessing today. Good night and God bless.